good afternoon, and you're welcome again to Searching the Heart. I'm here to do another episode on Elon Musk and Donald Trump in prophecy. Okay, I did that a few months ago, and I felt it is time again to do another one in this light. Now, before I continue with this, I've had a little experience in the world of prophecy, and recently I've come across a lot of criticism, which I myself have indulged in, I may say, of prophecy and prophetic statements. Yeah, and I've indulged a little in the criticisms of prophecy itself since I accepted the call to become a Christian pastor. Okay, and I accepted this call because I had started experiencing a lot of dreams and visions, day visions, night visions, and they were telling me a lot of things, mostly about myself, first and foremost. Okay, and then later on it continued when I got more into disciplining myself in an effort to improve my own personal growth. I started experiencing more visions that spanned outside myself, into the greater world. And I believe that this is very important as a foundation for understanding what prophecy is all about. Okay, you cannot really determine that you are called or a pastor or a prophet unless God gives you that wider vision. God specifically tells you, I am giving you this mandate to preach my message. Okay, how this happens is in itself the issue, part of the foundational issue that determines what a calling is all about, to become a pastor. I have had cause to criticize some of the perceptions of many others on what this is. Of course, in the greater world, even the concept of Christianity itself sometimes has been called to question. But of course, we know that Christianity has a very long history behind it, and that is more easily defensible than any individual's claim to be a prophet, to be called to be a prophet, or as it is today called man of God. And I've also tried to say what determines that. We need to understand what really determines that. Many people believe that it is the efficacy, of course, as enumerated by Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy 18, which says that a prophet of God must first, one of the first criteria is that his prophecy must come true. Okay, and of course, in the book of Ephesians, in the book of Corinthians, and we are told, okay, of the fivefold ministry. And the fivefold ministry includes the ministry of the apostles, of the evangelists, the ministry of the pastors, the teachers, and of the prophets. Okay, so that this fivefold ministry is a more specific delineation of the general calling to be a prophet, which is mostly an Old Testament delineation or designation. So this is what we have to first understand, and it takes a very long time for anybody to call himself or herself a prophet. Okay, it is easy to become a political leader. All you have to have is the people behind you, whether in an autocracy or in a democracy. At least you have a good percentage of some of the leaders of the country behind you. But in that of spiritual leadership, which comes the calling of being a prophet. Now we must understand this. Being a prophet is not a position, it is a calling. Okay? Being an apostle is a position, okay, and a calling. Being a teacher is a calling, not a position. Being a pastor is a position and a calling. Okay, so we have to understand all these differences within the fivefold ministry, all encompassed within the Old Testament concept of being a prophet. And it takes a lot of time to be able to confirm that a person is a prophet. Okay, and many times a lot of people are just teachers. Of course, in different cultures, teachers are known as maybe rabbis. In the Indian culture, they are the gurus. In the Islamic culture, the malams, and all that. So we have in different cultures, but I am of course focusing on the Christian understanding of the concept. And so we must understand this. So let me continue with the context at stake, okay? Now, being a prophet is a very, very delicate responsibility. And when God, it is believed that when you have met certain criteria in Christian discipleship, it gets to a point God begins to reveal himself to you. For the apostles in the Bible, that was about 3 years, okay? He led these men for 3 years and then commissioned them to take the gospel to the whole world, okay? Only one out of them was disqualified, which was Judas, okay? And the rest were given the responsibility of taking the gospel. Not just them, but they were to lead a total of 120 other disciples who themselves had a different gift, okay? And some of them were prophets, okay? But these 12 were apostles, were given the position of leadership, that is supreme leadership as a council in which Peter was the head, okay? So they met this criteria of 3 years of learning under Jesus Christ himself, okay? So once you've met this criteria, your gifts begin to show by the inpouring of the Holy Spirit into you. Your gifts begin to manifest. And one of the first gifts that according to the Bible, the apostles and the disciples, 120 of them, began to manifest was the gift of prophecy. And so that is why prophecy is the basis for Christian ministry. Okay? Prophecy is the basis for Christian ministry. So, and we have already established, if you've been following all the other podcasts, you would understand that we have established that Christian ministry is a global ministry, okay? It is a ministry that is supposed to bring the whole world together under the leadership of Jesus Christ himself. Now, this is the claim that many times is being challenged by other religions, by other perceptions in the world, okay? Whether this claim is genuine or not, okay? So this is the problem that we face in the world, and this is the basis of most of the conflict all over the world. Before Christianity came, it was the basis. And of course, we have said that some of these conflicts are based on tribal delineations. Okay, the sons of this man versus the sons of the other man, this nation versus that other nation, this race versus that race. But under Christianity, the aim is to bring all human beings as all children of the same ancestor called Adam in the Bible, and Eve, of course, under one umbrella. And of course, Jesus being the second Adam, is the one who brings human beings back to where they are supposed to be after they fell from grace under the first Adam, back into the position of sonship and heirship, inheritors of the planet Earth and of God's kingdom here on earth. So having built that foundation, now we can go ahead and talk about what we need to talk about, which is the current prophecy. Donald Trump and Elon Musk in prophecy.
Discover a transformative journey into the kingdom of heaven. Following the initial publication, the author dives deeper with two insightful follow-up books. Ever felt disconnected from God even in worship? Explore how God's unconventional ways can transform your life. How can you align with divine plans, avoiding distractions? Find answers in The Kingdom of Heaven on Earth and The 3, Illuminating Christian Truths and Prophetic Practices. Unlock profound insights guiding you toward a deeper connection with God. Don't miss out. Dive into this enlightening exploration today. Click the link on the caption to get your copy.
Donald Trump and Elon Musk in prophecy. Now, the revelation I'm going to be trying to expose to us today was given to me personally. Okay, I was about between about 1999 through to about 2003. Okay, now all these revelations spanned this period. Okay, 1999, or you can say 98 through to 2003. The most important ones, though, most of them were of a personal nature, but the most important ones happened 2001 through to 2003. Okay, and so generally would span about 23 years. Okay, plus and minus. So this is what happened. Now, the why I'm touched and I want to talk about this today is because yesterday again I was reminded. Some of these things come when you're asleep, of course, like dreams. Some of them come while you're wide awake. Okay, and this is the mystery of the prophetic ministry. And yesterday, while being wide awake, I was reminded of this one dream, and this was the dream that came to me about September 5th. Okay, in the probably either the late nights of September 4th or early in the morning September 5th. I did not write down the time, but this is what happened. Okay, I dreamt of so many things, and I'm not going to narrate them in detail. They are here in this journal here, my personal diary of so many years in 2 volumes. I may say it's quite a bit, and I'm not going to narrate it, but I had very terrible dreams that night. And normally when I have dreams that are very vivid and I remember all the details, I know that this dream is very important. Okay, and especially if it comes to me in a way that I do not really have any memories, okay, of any such thing, okay, or I did not really think about such a thing, and it just came. So I thought this must be important. And so after a few months, although I was shocked and I woke up in the night being very shocked, I went back to sleep. But 2 days after that very dream, there was a terrible event in my hometown. I had traveled out of town then. Actually, I went to school. I was in the university and studying engineering, of course. And I suddenly got a phone call. People around were talking and said, "Look, Jos is on fire. Your where you stay, your hometown. My real hometown is not Jos, but of course Jos is the capital of my state. Okay, so see, Jos is on fire. There is crisis. There is a bloodbath going on. And then I just froze because I just remember the dream I had 2 nights ago. Okay, and that dream had told me clearly there's going to be trouble. So of course it's written down. I don't want to elaborate it. Okay, so if that happened, but the most significant one again, which I did not really relate to this dream, but later on I could, was the 9/11 event. Okay, the 9/11 event took place, and I was dumbfounded. I said, look, these events must be related. Okay, so of course 4 days later, okay, so we were actually really struggling with the event that took place in our own hometown. It was Jos, and that was the issue for us. And so the 9/11 thing didn't really really grip us at first, because we were more concerned were our relatives alive, what would have happened if we were at home, all those kinds of things. So we were calling them, finding out how they were. At the same time, of course, the 9/11 thing had happened, and probably the same thing was happening in the US, and all the other events took place. The war in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and all those things. So the revelation was, sometimes these revelations, first of all, let me clarify, these revelations are not always given, because sometimes you're not there, and so there's nothing to relate with what is really going on. Okay, and so they are actually symbolic. Okay, they are actually symbols are used. Okay, like in the Bible, what you call allegorical, they are allegorical symbols, and they are typological symbols. Okay, so some symbols are typological, some are allegorical, and they're given to you in a way that you would be able to relate it to physical things. Okay, so that was how it was given. Okay, but I was told very clearly, it was very clear that such events would happen. And at the end, one very important event was shared, that there was a man looking, of course, like that is how I was able to relate it to the 9/11 events. Okay, looking like the US president. Okay, speaking from the TV screen. And at the end of his speech, I felt a rush of peace, a rush of joy, and all that. So I could not explain what that meant. The 9/11 event was an event that was horrific. Okay, it was terrible. So how could peace and joy be related to such an event? So it took me a long time to actually relate the 9/11 event to that very dream as a whole. I was more concerned about Jos and what had happened in Jos. Okay, and so yesterday Trump gave a speech, and after the speech I woke up in the night and suddenly it came to me, that part of the dream just came to pass. Okay, now don't rush yet, don't rush. I am not drawing a line under the thing yet. Okay, yesterday, as my memory was jogged about that event, I remember 3 days ago I put it up on social media that we had completed a 23-year prophetic cycle. Okay, and of course, as I woke up last night, my memory being jogged confirmed that I actually got it right. Okay, and that this part of the dream that I had 2001, September 2001, had just happened. Trump's speech yesterday was a fulfillment of that part. Okay, or at best the beginning of the fulfillment of the power. So the revelation is very clear. Okay, it is very clear. It comes in that way. I have explained how the revelation takes place. Okay, and in dreams, when you are awake, okay, you see visions in your head, and you know this is what it is talking about. Okay, so I've talked about the revelation, I've talked about the events, I've talked about the context. Okay, Jos, Nigeria, being plagued by ethno-religious crises. The same it is, and over the years we have confirmed that this is linked to the Al-Qaeda network, of course, and we know that this the same Al-Qaeda network that perpetrated the 9/11 attacks. Of course, ISIS, all the different names that we have come to relate with these things. Okay, so we talked about the context. It's a global context. Okay, and Nelson Jennings talks about the local. Okay, context also. Okay, so my concern, I'll be talking about a few issues, and one of the concerns here is the simplicity involved. Okay, when I first got these messages, of course I haven't talked about the second set of messages. I'm focusing on the first. I'm going to talk about that later. But my first impression in this first set is not simplicity at all. They were events that were very horrific. They were global in nature, and so they really shook myself. They shook many people. Okay, and there was no simplicity at all. But the second vision, of course, like I said, the prophetic ministry itself starts with every Christian after receiving the Holy Spirit. Okay, for me it started when I became born again. Okay, so I received the Holy Spirit and I started receiving messages, okay, telling me about my own self, my personal life. And of course I was shaken by these things, but they were personal, so they didn't really shake me that much. Okay, and the second set of visions that shook me and took a global nature were also very personal, and they raised they kind of jogged my perception or instigated that perception in me of the simplicity of the nature of prophecy itself. And this comes to highlight the fact that the individual is involved and there's a greater context. When you talk about the community, there is this idea of, complexity. But when you talk about the individual, there is a lot of simplicity. Okay, everyday life decisions were important. Okay, whatever I did, I decided to do was at stake. Okay, and so this is the thing involved here. Okay, so there's a lot of simplicity here. And one of the things that really touched me yesterday about the message of Donald Trump that was also called to my attention yesterday was also the simplicity. In fact, yesterday's speech lacked the grandeur that we were all expecting. As in, this great guy coming on the world stage and saying now everything is going to change. In fact, the second vision had a similar kind of event. Okay, there was this great guy that came out and said, look, from now on things are going to be different. There's going to be democracy, and there was an emphasis on democracy and the independence of every nation. Okay, so I'm exposing to you some of the issues in the revelation. Okay, but yesterday, because I was the prophet involved, it lacked that grandeur. It was so simple, and I could see the man, the human being involved. And what God used that to do for me was that He exposed to me the nature of the struggle that we have ahead. the next, I don't know whether it's going to be 20 years, 40 years, 50 years, 100 years, the next prophetic cycle is going to take a particular dimension. And this is the nature of the human dilemma. Okay? That God, and this is what I've been trying to preach over a few years now, okay? That God has given us a lot of responsibility, individual responsibility. And each individual is very important in the scheme of things. One individual can change the whole direction of human destiny. Okay, so this is just what was revealed to me yesterday in the night as I woke up. Okay, not as I slept, but as I woke up. Okay, and this is all based on the recordings here in the journal, which are about 23 years old. Okay, so this is what happened. So the simplicity involved. Okay, these are ordinary human beings, men, just like the 12 apostles were ordinary human beings, and we are told that Peter's choleric nature affected a lot of what he did as the head apostle, and this may have led to God calling a 13th apostle, which was Paul. Okay, and also Peter's reluctance to challenge the Jewish authority must have also caused God to call the 13th apostle, which was the apostle Paul, because Paul was more knowledgeable and was more in the position to challenge them in those things. Okay, so this is what I saw yesterday. God called my attention to yesterday. Okay, the simplicity involved. Okay, and what does this actually lead to? I'm going to say it. I'm not going to wait till the end. I'm going to repeat it, but this is what I'm going to say. Okay, if you haven't gotten it yet, we are playing a far more important role in our destiny. Many people think that, okay, it's just about God coming and he's going to just make sure everything works out, whether for the bad or for good. Of course, he's going to destroy the wicked and he's going to save those who believe in him. Okay, but from what I understand, after a few years of studying the Bible, and from this very explanation and interpretation yesterday, I came to understand that human beings have a very important role to play. Okay, so it is the kingdom of heaven on earth, not the kingdom of spirits. Okay, kingdom of spirits is very different from the kingdom of heaven on earth. Okay, it is a kingdom for human beings. Okay, involve human beings, not spirits. So there's a lot of simplicity involved. Okay, so there are two important figures that are at play at this time, and this is going to lead me to the exposition of the second dream. Okay, and the second dream exposed, of course, the politician had already been introduced in the first dream. Okay, in the person of a man who looked like the president of the United States. Okay, but this second dream, okay, included quite a lot of people, and I wish I could give you all the details of the second dream, which encompasses the Obama period right through to this very time I'm talking about. Of course, it was in the Obama period that the declaration of every nation having the right to choose its own leadership was done. It wasn't done on public TV, probably vaguely, but that was the idea. And of course, in my dream, Obama was represented as a man with dreadlocks. Okay, and we know where Obama comes from. Okay, we know his heritage, Black American. We know the Black American heritage. It is the African Rastafarian heritage, okay? And of course, that was just a symbol used to represent the fact that a black man will become president of the United States, and he was going to affirm certain ideas. Okay, you know, Haile Selassie was, of course, the Messiah of the black people, and many people saw Obama the same way. So I saw a man with dreadlocks, and he made that declaration. Okay, that is after I saw the 9/11 event and the American president making his own declaration. Okay, so that was it. Okay, so that's the two dreams actually kind of bracketed this period. Okay, this 3-year period between 2001 to 2003. 2 years, I may say. Okay, so this is what happened. Okay, so there were two people that were important, three actually. Okay, first of all, prophets like myself were categorized, described, and I was told what was going to happen with the church. Okay, of course that the church will become weaker. Okay, and smaller churches will play a far more important role. Okay, within that period, that happened. That has happened. It has been fulfilled already. Okay, and I made note of that in the book, The Kingdom of Heaven on Earth. Okay, the second group of people, of course, the politicians that will play a very important role. We've already discussed that. Okay, and Donald Trump just fulfilled that prophecy yesterday. Then the third group is another important group. Okay, and these are the scientists, the engineers. Okay, and I'm not going to talk much about it because we know what's happening now. Okay, for the first time in history, we've had a man who has become almost a trillionaire, an engineer, a scientist, okay, who is having so much effect on the world economy. And he was also revealed, more silent part, but he was revealed, and it was told to me that such people, not just him, but such people will play an important role. And a signal was given as to how I would know the person, and that was fulfilled like 2 months ago, during the stiff between Donald Trump and Elon. So these three group of people were to play a very important role in world events. The prophets and leaders of the church, the politicians, especially the American heads of states, and then thirdly, intelligent people, that specific intelligent people that will be given a role. Okay, I'm sure Bill Gates played his role before that, but this was a time, a change. Okay, and this generation, especially Elon Musk, must have been, I believe, that figure. The funny thing was that I wasn't told he was going to be a white man. Okay, in the dream, a very insignificant figure was used to represent him, and so I couldn't know who he was. And I have to say, in the fulfillment, he was the most difficult person for me to come and to understand who he was. Okay, till the very end, after I had done what I was told to do, I had fulfilled my own part. Then I got to understand this is the person, that part of the dream must have been talking about. Okay, so that was Elon Musk. Okay, and so these three groups of people were very important. Okay, and I want to also emphasize, it's not just the individual, but people like him. Okay, that God will choose to play such a role. Okay, so, and of course that was confirmed by a few prophets around Jos. I think it was a global revelation that said around that time, between 98 and the year 2000, and the same period, okay, that said that God will begin to call generals into his work. Okay, not just the ordinary anymore. God was used to calling ordinary people, but now he will begin to call generals into his work. And what the meaning of generals is people who are really, they must have had some greater destiny, temporal destiny, but he will be calling them back into the church to do his work. Okay, so that was the same idea resonated at that time. And of course, I didn't compare it with that, but that is what I was told. It was a silent theme within my own revelation, okay? I didn't understand it until it just happened, okay, some months back, and it's still happening. Of course, Elon Musk is still there, okay? So, we've seen these two rules. The role of the prophets of the church, these three rules: prophets of the church, intelligent people, and then the politicians, okay? So, now we will be able to dissect the contents of the first prophecy. The second prophecy only expanded on what the first prophecy was saying. Okay, so that is why I believe my attention was called yesterday to that first prophecy, which is very, very important. Okay, so we'll be looking at the contents of this first prophecy. What was the first prophecy actually talking about? It was talking about the new age. And what is the new age? The new age started from the Industrial Revolution right through to the time we are right now. Okay, and it gave the modern economy a greater edge on our previous dispensations of world development. Okay, it gave the modern economy an edge over previous dispensations, and this was the interpretation of that very dream. Okay, and two things stood clear. And yesterday, not Elon Musk, but Donald Trump spoke about these two things. Okay, and the things that were emphasized were the issue of physical developments, of course, that have characterized the urban economy all through human existence. And second was the mobile economy, okay, transportation economy, okay. Those two things were emphasized. I never saw those things that way before. I completely misinterpreted in fact, the truth is that I never understood what it was. The buildings were there, and secondly, there was a train, a green train, okay? A green train that moved on a highway, okay? It moved on a highway straight, and it got to a point, the head of the green train cut off and rolled and crashed into the developments on the left side of the track, okay? So there were developments on the left side of the track. I'm not going to mention the specific development because that also has a personal touch to it. But it crashed on the developments on the left side of the train, which was actually a road in real life. But somehow a rail had been constructed there, and there was that long green train moving on that rail, okay, or on the road. So it crashed, and at the end of the dream, at that same time, it was explained to me that the head of the train was going to be reattached, and it will continue moving. And so this is a very important part of the dream, okay. And I was able to understand the interpretation just yesterday. I had misinterpreted it completely, but yesterday I was able to get it. And Donald Trump just exposed it to me, okay, and by attacking green energy. Remember, the train was green, okay, and it was said the head had cut off and rolled and tampered with development, okay, and it was reattached, and it continued moving, okay. So he just explained it to me yesterday by his attack on green or renewable energy. Now, this very peculiar interpretation, that was what gave me some of the greatest difficulty yesterday when I was still pondering on it with the Holy Spirit. I was thinking, so what does this mean? Does this mean that Donald Trump was right, first of all? Now there are many other things involved in this context, because you're not, I would understand it better, you wouldn't. Of course, I haven't narrated the whole dream to you, of course, but these are the important points. Okay, was Donald Trump right? Was he wrong? Was it saying that the green train is good? Because that was the most beautiful thing in the whole dream, the green train. Okay, but on the other side, if it was the head of the green train that had lost traction, was it the aggressor? Are the proponents of climate change the aggressors? And I tried to get an explanation to that, but I couldn't get any explanation. Okay, the only explanation that was given to me was that these, in the greater interpretation of the dream, these things worked together. Okay, these things work together. They are all part and parcel of development itself. And we human beings have a tendency to kind of jump at the new thing. And this is what happened. Okay, that very context that was shown to me in that dream represented this desire of human beings, because it was my state, Plateau State, Nigeria, at its infancy when it was created. Those buildings were built to kind of begin this new move, as a symbol of our acceptance of this new move around education, around modern civilization, and that was it. Okay, so those buildings represented that. Okay, government and all that. And when the green train passed and its head rolled and hit a part of the developments, okay, this showed that, okay, maybe the climate change proponents were the aggressors. Okay, but at the same time, the silent thing within those set of developments was that the developments themselves could not be finished. And this was part of most of the developments in Nigeria and of course in my state, that although the visionary had very, very great, ambition, a very great ambition behind the whole thing, they could not finish it. Okay, it stopped at a point. So it represented, the inability of human beings to actually conceptualize and actually implement their great desire for development, as in the Tower of Babel, of course. But at the same time, because they don't have resources, for one, and secondly because they are divided, they don't know where to go to. Donald Trump yesterday was emphasizing the return to fossil fuels. Okay, the green energy people still have a point. Personally, I'm like Donald Trump. I hate windmills, but I love solar energy. Okay, yes, electric, cars and all that. I love that. So they're still very efficient. Not as efficient as nuclear, but still very useful in certain areas of the world. Okay, and still a part of modern civilization, still a part of what is going to move humanity to the next level. Okay, so I didn't really agree 100% what Donald Trump was saying, although he had a little point. Okay, so that was my dilemma yesterday when I was reminded of this dream, and I kept on struggling with the speech yesterday and how that related to the interpretation of the dream. Okay, so I believe that this is a very important thing, but at the same time, my attention was also drawn to the simplicity of the whole situation. We think of it as if the world is going to end, everything is going to finish, we're waiting for some doomsday event, but as it has played, it appears so simple and so straightforward. I mean, Donald Trump is not going to launch any nuclear missiles anytime soon, okay, at anybody who rejects him. It's your choice, okay, and you see the emphasis on democracy, as I talked about, okay, and he's just acting as a person. This is who he is, and he's going to take that into leadership, and it's going to affect a lot of lives. Okay, so this is the issue. What I was given yesterday, and I believe encompassed the whole theme of the dream, is that we have a very important role to play. And if we toy with the little roles that we play, we're going to mess it up. And just the simplicity of a man like Donald Trump and the power he wields at the same time really gave me this as a food for thought. Okay, a lot of us we take our own greed, our own personal greed, and our own personal ambitions and our own personal biases very lightly. But these things are going to play a very important role in the future of humanity, and that is the whole idea behind this whole thing. Of course, it is left to us to decide who is right and who is wrong. That is I believe at this point, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or next, but it's left to us to decide. Should we unite these two things together, green energy, fossils, and gradually build up from there, as we have been doing, or should we pitch them against one another? Okay, it's left for us. Okay, it was very clear in the dream. If you read it, you will see it very clearly. At the left side where the train hit, there was. It's not supposed to be a refinery there. They are just a housing. It's just a housing estate. Okay, but in the dream there was a very large refinery. Okay, a very large oil refinery at that side. So it is clearly pitting fossil fuels against green energy. So that conclusion was very clear. Okay, so this is the role of a prophet. Okay, and that is why it took so long for me to reveal this part of the dream. Okay, because our responsibilities are very important. One very important rule for a prophet: never allow your bias, your personal bias, whether community or personal, to interfere with God's message to you, because it has dastardly consequences. Now, this is the issue, okay? And it will affect the greater humanity, and it will affect you as a person, okay? So this is the problem, okay? So never allow those biases. That is why I had to wait all this time to give any narration or interpretation, because it was not for me to do, okay? It's not for me to do. So this is the thing. And what we've been experiencing over the few years now is community, has really played a very important role in our events over the past 20 years. Okay, I might say blasphemous, but who am I to say anything? Okay, and it has led individuals to also make blasphemous decisions. But like I said, who am I to say anything? Remember, it is God who has given us this power, and from yesterday's interpretation, the power is still in our hands. Okay, if whatever we choose to do with it, He's going to judge at the end. Okay, so this is what is happening. Okay, so I have discussed that. Okay, with that small note of warning, as I started, please continue to put it in mind. This is the prophetic ministry. You don't bring your personal bias into it. Okay, that is very important. Okay, presidents, politicians also have that role. As you see what happened to Donald Trump in his first tenure. He got a little too personal in his first tenure and lost the presidency. Oh, now he is a more experienced Donald Trump that we're seeing. I've talked about this before. So, very important, okay? But for prophets, it's even far more important, okay? So, this is very important. So, the themes that are going to be struggling are the themes of development versus conservation, okay? These are the two themes that will be struggling, okay, at the global level. They are already struggling, and this will take a very center stage. And why is this? Because the technologies that are going to push us to the next frontier are very important. And for me, that brought about my own little bias. Space travel, okay, space exploration. The moving train not only for me represented green energy, but also transportation. And for humanity to progress in the real sense, there has to be the physical development with transportation together. Bringing my point, the unity of all things, okay? But the role of transportation, sometimes while neglected, is very important. From the time of the discovery of the four-wheeled cart, to the discovery of the car, to the discovery of the plane, now to the discovery of rockets since 1950s, okay? This is very, very important, okay?
Discover a transformative journey into the kingdom of heaven. Following the initial publication, the author dives deeper with two insightful follow-up books. Ever felt disconnected from God even in worship? Explore how God's unconventional ways can transform your life. How can you align with divine plans, avoiding distractions? Find answers in The Kingdom of Heaven on Earth, and The 3, Illuminating Christian Truths and Prophetic Practices. Unlock profound insights guiding you toward a deeper connection with God. Don't miss out. Dive into this enlightening exploration today. Click the link on the caption to get your copy.
So I'm going to round up on that, okay? I don't know where it's going to go, okay, because that's left to the engineers and the policy makers, okay, to solve. Okay, that's a development issue, okay, not the issue of the church primarily, okay? But it's very clear that this is going to play a very important role, okay? So for me, what I have been talking about and preaching for the last 2 years or so is the problem with human civilization, and the problem is the longevity dilemma, okay? Some of the issues that impinge on the simplicity of our role in prophecy and all that, and that some of our personal issues get entangled in the destiny of human beings, has to do with our longevity. Okay, no matter how Donald Trump or Elon Musk want to, superintend over human destiny, their time is very short. Okay, these days the longest living people are dying at 99. Okay, very notable people like the King of England, Billy Graham, and a few others died at 99. Okay, I believe the Queen also was heading towards 90 something when she died, I think 96 or so. And so that is the best we can do. Okay, and this really affects our ability to really affect human destiny, maybe for the good. Okay, because the moral issue comes in. Okay, if the reason in the Bible I was given for shortening the lifespan of human beings is because of their sinfulness. Okay, because they allow their sinfulness to get into the work of God. Okay, and that is the reason why God shortened their lifespan to 120. Okay, and in our time, at some time it got way down to about 50 something, and right now is probably around 70s. Okay, so the issue of longevity is a very important thing. We can do very little about human destiny, okay, and we tend to play with it because we know that we will not last long. Of course, Christians will take it seriously if they truly believe, but we know how the Christian message is being watered down right now, okay, and so and of course the Muslims take it too far, and they go into radicalization and all that, and of course cause a lot of mayhem, as in the 9/11 issue and in events that have been happening since then. Okay, so the longevity dilemma is there, and from the looks of things, I don't know, I can't say. It doesn't look like anything is going to change very soon. Okay, and that is why it is very important that I have been preaching for some years, that we shift our focus from the very great destiny of human beings, also as concerns the human desire, back into a collective effort this time, okay, to improve technology, to improve the future of future generations, not necessarily this generation. Okay, longevity is part of it, but this is going to be a united effort. It's not going to be the effort of one tribe or one group of people, okay, or one person for that matter. So at the end, this is going to give birth to a possible kingdom of heaven on earth. This may bring about the quick return of Jesus Christ. I decided to talk about the longevity for a reason, because without moral purity, human beings will never be allowed to solve the longevity issue. That is my view, okay? I believe that without moral purity. And so this is where the church comes in, okay? The church is not going to deal with rockets. The church is not going to deal with buildings, although the church is really into building these days, okay, somewhat to preserve history. But the purview of the church is moral purity, okay, moral integrity. And once the church succeeds, as the Bible says, when the bride is ready, that is when Jesus Christ will come. Okay, so the onus is still in the hands of the church. If the church does not mature, the kingdom of heaven on earth will not mature. We'll keep on debating about climate change. We'll keep on debating about development. The wars will continue until when God decides to stop it all. Okay, so this is what is going on. Okay, so before I round up, let me ask the question: is climate change more important than we think? Very important. Remember, climate change played a role in Genesis 1 verse 1. And the Spirit of the Lord was hovering over the deep. Okay? And the earth was void and without form. Remember Genesis chapter 6. Okay? The flood. Okay? Remember Sodom and Gomorrah. Remember the prophecies of the book of Revelation. Climate change will play an important role. And this has happened AD 600, close to AD 600, where climate change wiped out almost a third of human beings on the earth, as prophesied by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Okay, so Vesuvius, is it Vesuvius or yes? This happened. So will climate change play a bigger role than we think? Is a question for all of us. I am David Dunji Chinki for you today in Searching the Heart.